Hello, Sangeeta. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible, ma'am, but your video is not visible,
So,
ma'am. You are on your
it's okay? I'm the mountains. So from the mountains. Hello, Geeta, you can hear me? Geeta? Geeta, am I audible?
Ma'am, you are audible. Please mute yourself.
Yes.
A very good morning, delegates. On behalf of the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics, Mount Carmel College Autonomous Bengaluru, and Department of Food Processing and Engineering, St. Aloysius College, Mangaluru, it gives us immense pleasure to welcome you to the two-day National E-Workshop on Dynamic Facets of Sports Nutrition, Meeting the Challenges. We now invite Dr. Sangeeta Pandey, Head, Department of Nutrition and Dietetics and convener of National E-Workshop 2020, Mount Carmel College, to introduce us to the theme of the workshop. Thank you.
Hearty welcome to all students, academicians, and hearty welcome to all students, academicians, and nutrition and sports professionals. I would like to refer a quote here by Jack LaLanne. Exercise is king, nutrition is queen. Put them together and you have got a kingdom. So to spread nutrition awareness and to celebrate National Nutrition Month, this national level workshop has been organized by Department of Nutrition and Dietetics and St. Aloysius College, Mangalore. National Nutrition Month is celebrated in India every year during the month of September. This year theme is Poshan ke liye paudhe and identification and tracking of severe acute malnutrition. Nutrition plays an important role in overall mental and physical development of an individual. During this lockdown period, we have observed that physical activity and sports have been majorly restricted, and which has resulted in mental and physical health issues among the children. So I can say this became an opportunity for selecting a theme for this national level conference workshop on dynamic facet of sports nutrition meeting the challenges to create awareness and imparting knowledge among students, budding nutrition professionals regarding the challenges which we will be possibly facing post-COVID scenario. As we all know that majority of our player comes from the rural background with very limited resources. This workshop is an effort to equip the participants in identifying and resolving nutrition related issues that occur due to dietary negligence and lack of relevant information. So the deliberation of this national workshop will bring meaningful discussions and hopefully conclude in a useful take-home messages, which will help us professionally in future. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shameen Jerome, Vice Principal, Mount Carmel College, to inaugurate this workshop. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Good morning and a very warm welcome to all our distinguished delegates. The Honorable Prime Minister has announced September 2020 as Poshan Ma. This National Nutrition Month celebration comes with a lot of responsibilities among nutrition professionals, as this month is celebrated by creating awareness regarding nutrition in the community, and also focusing on the importance of making informed food choices and developing sound food and physical activity habits. In this regard, the Department of Nutrition and Dietetics has organized a plethora of activities throughout the month. The grand finale being the national level workshop on dynamic facets of sports nutrition, meeting challenges. On behalf of the principal, Dr. Sistarpana, I would like to extend a hearty welcome to all our luminaries who have agreed to deliver a talk on this occasion. A warm welcome to all the delegates who have registered from different parts of our country. Your response is indeed overwhelming, and we do appreciate the same. Over the years, sports nutrition has morphed in parallel with the growing awareness of the role that exercise plays in overall health, and today, with greater advancements in science and research, nutrition in sport is now rapidly growing and developing innovative ways to help people perform better. At this juncture, I extend my congratulations to the PG Department of Nutrition and Dietetics, who have taken up this current topic during these challenging times, where sports can play a crucial role in building the nation's health. May you have an enriching experience. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. It was indeed an encouraging message. You rightly said this area is a growing opportunity. And what can be better than this to celebrate Poshan Ma? I welcome all our speakers for today's session. Dr. Kiran Kumar Kulkarni, uh, Dr. K.A. Tyagarajan, Ms. Kunda Mahajan, Ms. Aradhana Sharma, Dr. D.B.A. Narayana, Dr. Bharat Kumar, and Ms. Apurva. Now, I will hand over the session to Dr. Padma to introduce our first speaker of the day. Over to you, Padma. Thank you. Actually, that was.
Thank you, Sangeeta ma'am. We now start our workshop with the first session, which is most interesting and sensitive topic in sports, awareness and engagement in anti-doping education. Since ancient times, unethical athletes have attempted to gain an unfair competitive advantage through the use of doping substances. Doping has become a key complex issue in the sports world, which deserves serious consideration as specialists are still striving to understand how and why it happens and how to prevent it. Much of the substances used today can be easily detected, but the development of new, cheaper, and faster methods could help the Anti Doping Federation to fight against doping in a very effective way. Doping in sports is a never ending story. To clarify the air of doubts, we have a very eminent speaker with us today who would take us in detail about the subject. Dear participants, it is my pleasure and privilege to introduce Dr. Kiran Kumar Kulkarni to you all. Dr. Kiran Kumar Kulkarni is from Dharwad, completed his schooling from Sri Ramakrishna Vidyashala, Mysore, and holds an MBBS degree from Mysore University. He has post-graduation in sports medicine, PG diploma in diet and nutrition, and he has completed his FIMS advanced team physician course from Beijing, China. He is also listed on the World Anti-Doping Agency's researchers directly. Sir has got certified as the FIFA and AMC Medical and Doping Control Officer in the year 2013, 2015, 2017 and 2020. Doctor is a consultant in sports medicine, exercise, fitness, nutrition and rehabilitation, former national team doctor for All India Football Federation, medical and anti-doping advisor to Gymnastic Federation of India, past executive council member of Indian Association of Sports Medicine and Indian Federation of Sports Medicine, and he is at present the Joint Secretary of Indian Society for Sports and Exercise Medicine. An international sportsman himself, he has participated in various national and international gymnastics championships for Indian Association of Sports Medicine conferred him on National Award and Fellowship for his outstanding contribution to the field of sports medicine in India. He was appointed as a venue doping control manager at 2010 Commonwealth Games, New Delhi. He was a team doctor for the senior national football team during the Asian Cup in January 2011 at Doha and at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in March 2011. At present, he is Asian Football Confederation's medical officer, the only doctor from Karnataka and one amongst 4 in India. He was in Indonesia for AFC Under-19 Finals October 2018 as a tournament medical officer. He has been trained by the BIXI Medical Department and International Dope Testing and Management Sweden as Dope Control Officer. Dr. Kiran has received the Karnataka State Olympic Award 2017 under the Department of Youth Services and Sports, Government of Karnataka, for its outstanding achievements in the field of sports medicine. Sir has served as a medical and a doping control officer at the IPL cricket since 2014 till date. He has been awarded the Meritorious Service Bronze Medal for his contribution to the field of football medicine in Asia in March 2019. And participants, he is the only Indian in this category to receive this prestigious award. International Federation of Physical Education, Fitness and Sports Science Association conferred on him IFPEFSSA International Award in recognition to his services in the field of anti-doping education nationally and internationally in July 2019. Dr. Kiran has been appointed as a medical and a doping control officer for Under-19 AFC football finals to be held in Tashkent, Uzbekistan in October 2020. Dr. Kiran sir believes in say no to drugs, play true, clean sports and health for all. Over to you, sir.
Sir, kindly unmute yourself and you can start sharing, sir. So you have to unmute yourself.
Is my screen visible? Madam, is my screen visible? Is my screen visible?
Yes, sir, your screen is visible, sir. You can minimize the small box which is appearing on your window, sir. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for a brief introduction. And before I start with this topic, I would like to thank Madam Sangeeta and of course my dear friend Adarsh Gowda, who actually requested me to give a talk on this topic of awareness and engagement with anti-doping education. And of course, we as doctors being quite busy with our COVID duties and seeing COVID patients, so somehow when it comes to the education of doping in sports, I will see to it that I am always there on the forefront in imparting this education on anti-doping. So in today's world of sports, where name, fame, money, honors, awards, these rule the ethics of sports and health, and all these are pushed under the carpet. It's like a do or die situation for the athlete, coaches, administrators, federations, and they also pressurize the athlete to perform. So the athlete can go to any extent. Use of drugs in sports goes back to ancient times, way back to the very invention of the concept called sports. Gladiators in ancient Greece and Roman era were given cocaine mixed with honey and lime juice before combats, which were fight till death. So Galen was a student of Hippocrates, the father of sports medicine. Okay, he had written this in his book on sports medicine. So the dilemma also exists, like whether these athletes what or whether they have to come into the ambit of taking drugs. So this has been a tough time for the researchers, the World Anti-Doping Agency, International Olympic Committee, National, our Indian Olympic Committee, and all the sporting bodies. What should be done to erase or to cut down this menace of doping? So in this talk, I would like to give a bird's eye view on the definition of drug and medicine, definition of doping, its relevance to all of us. Doping, what are these doping control activities, and list of banned substances. What is the practical aspect of doping control procedure? Because this being a workshop, I thought I'll bring you to this practical aspect of doping control procedure. What about the documentation and lab procedure? And all these come under the solid foundation of the sports medicine. So what is the relevance of sports medicine is also equally important, because anti-doping is a part of sports medicine, and sports medicine deals with conservative aspect of sports injuries along with the know-hows of the branches of sports medicine. So without knowing the branches of sports medicine, we can't go on. So these are the various branches of sports medicine where I have highlighted two of these. One is the sports nutrition, that is the absolute your department, and another one is the sports pharmacology and doping. Along with this, we have this sports science subjects like sports anthropometry, exercise physiology, sports biotypology, sports medical assessment and emergency medicine, sports orthopedics, pediatric sports, women and sports, that is the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, sports radiology, biomechanics and kinesiology, training methods. There is a, can't see anything on the screen.
Sir, we can able to view your slide, sir. It is on branches of sports medicine. And now we have changed it to anatomy of OBG sports science.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yeah, sorry, there was a blackout of the screen. I don't know why, Anyways, so let me continue. So we have these branches like training methods, sports physiotherapy, geriatric sports, disability sports, therapeutic sports, and now we have this latest recovery sports medicine. So now, whenever you open up your TV channels or you see the news, you always have this the topic of drug going on the screens of our TV channels. So let me make it clear, like, there is always a tug of war between what is a medicine, what is a medication, what is a drug. So in pharmacology, a drug is a chemical substance typically of known structure, which when administered to a living organism produces a biological effect. A pharmaceutical drug, also called as a medication or medicine, is a chemical substance used to treat, cure, prevent deficiencies, or diagnose a disease, or to promote well-being, and now also to enhance performance, or we call it as sports drugs or performance enhancing drugs. So I have put up my own classification, but as soon as you Google, you will have different classifications. But this seems to be quite simple and quite legible also. Like, the classification goes on like this. The medicines, drug is a very broad spectrum. Okay, so medicines, medications, which we use to treat and cure patients in hospitals for diseases like antibiotics, antipyretics, analgesics, we call it as painkillers, antihypertensives are blood pressure medicines, and of course antidiabetics. Okay, these medications we use in day-to-day treating the patients. And to prevent deficiencies, we also use these medicines like vitamins, minerals like iron, calcium, etc. And also to diagnose diseases, we give barium meal or inject dyes so that these diagnose a disease when we put them on a CT scan or a MRI. And of course now we have these recreational drugs or those drugs हमारे मनोरंजन के लिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं मनोरंजन के उपयोग ಮಾಡುವಂತ medicines, so like cocaine, LSD, MDMA, cannabis, GHB, heroin, etc. These we also called it as the street drugs. Now coming to the sports drugs on which I'm going to talk today are the steroids, THG, diuretics, etc., etc., etc. And one more, we have this, drugs to promote well-being. So as soon as you Google this, again you will get illegal drugs. But what I have put up is this one. Okay. So the drug for well-being is that Hippocrates, who is considered to be the father of modern medicine, said famously, walking is the man's best medicine. Over 2 million years later, a new study from Australia again reconfirmed that exercise is the best medicine for mental, social, and physical well-being. So the take-home message before we go into the main topic is again physical fitness, good sleep with good diet and nutrition, which is your department. Okay, this will take you a long way in promoting your health and well-being. So coming to the main topic, like what is doping? So administration or use of any pharmacological substance foreign to the body or any physiological substance taken in abnormal quantity with the sole purpose, okay, the sole purpose of increasing the performance by unfair and illegal means and methods constitute doping, and it is an offense. So we have these anti-doping activities like which we are doing, like the promotion, education and information as I am giving in this workshop, and doping control organization and development of doping tests. What about the quality systems which we developed worldwide? And it has to be a standard protocol. Again, we are doing these international activities. We promote research activities and also educate through the TV channels, newspapers, radio talks, workshops like this. And of course, this was one of the drug education program done to the Indian Medical Association doctors in Dharwad. And again, this was a survey conducted by me and was presented in the World Sports Medicine Conference. Again, we did a survey on the physical educators and coaches who are in directly related to the athletes. Again, national workshop. These are all educational and awareness activities, and again through newspapers. And going back to the dirty track of Indian sports, where in about 2014-15, India was third biggest offender of doping, only after Russia and Italy. Again, in 17-18, 18-19, we stood second in the highest number of these doping cases. Okay, again, in last 5 years, though this is an old post, but still it is quite relevant because we have a lot of our athletes. And again, if you see this national school games where high school athletes were found to be doped. So the National Anti-Doping Agency statistics in 18-19 and 19-20 show that excellent work done by our National Anti-Doping Agency. And again, we are doing a lot of work to erase the menace of drugs in sports, because we are doing these young athletes to who are falling to this drugs. So now coming to the prohibited substance and methods. Okay, so this is updated on 1st January every year. So by January 1st, 2021, a new list will come up, and that will be in vogue. So why doping in different sports? So this is because all these athletes need strength and speed for performance, endurance, and sports will also require a lot of concentration. So doping is possible in every sport. So there is no shortcut to being a champion. So we always need to play hard, play fair, and we have to play true. So these are few infamous doping offenders, and the first one, if you could see, like the Ben Johnson, 1988 Seoul Olympics, where he won a gold medal in the record time of 9.69 seconds. And overnight, he was caught for doping for he had consumed a banned substance stanzolol, and it was his downfall. So when do these athletes commit to doping? Okay, when his or her doping sample, maybe either a urine sample or a blood sample, contains a prohibited substance or its metabolite, he or she uses a prohibited method or manipulates the doping sample, or evades or refuses to take a doping sample or give a doping sample, and most dangerous thing is promotion of these, okay, doping, like smuggling or selling of these doping substances. It may be either by the doctor, physio, trainer, coach, or anybody who is related to these sports people. Okay, these are the few things. Once if you are caught, then you are eligible for sanctions. So what are these groups of doping substances? We have these three main groups where it is classified like prohibited substance groups, methods, and prohibited substance groups in certain sports. So we go to the first classification where we have these substance groups which are prohibited in sports, like anabolic agents, hormones, these asthma medications or beta-2 agonists, agents with anti-estrogenic activity, diuretics, masking agents, stimulants, narcotics, cannabinoids or ganja, and glucocorticosteroids. So the ones which are marked in red are used most. So the most abused of all the banned substances are the anabolic steroids, okay, and they are the testosterone derivatives whose anabolic effect are stronger than that of testosterone, like methandione, nandrolone, metanolone, stanzolol, etc. And of course, the designer steroid, tetrahydrogesterone. Why we call it as the designer steroid is like this was developed specially, like if you have heard of this Balco Lab scam, okay, it was in the Bay Area of San Francisco, United States, where Victor Conte was the main accused person in this. What he did was like he made a mixture of cocktail of 5 drugs like erythropoietin, growth hormone, modafinil, testosterone, and they called this as a designer steroid, which also included tetrahydrogesterone. So this designer drug, okay, were unable, the World Anti-Doping Agency was, the laboratories were not able to detect these designer steroids, and there was a whistleblower. Only then we could find out that many athletes like Marion Jones, then Tim Montgomery, CJ Hunter, like he was an Olympic gold medalist in shot put. All these high-profile athletes were abusing this designer steroid. They are prohibited because they increase muscular mass and strength. They affect the hormone balance and metabolism. They prevent overtraining and they enhance early recovery and also anabolism, that they start building the muscle. So this is the reason why everybody abuses anabolic drugs, but the side effects of these steroids are too much, and that is the main reason why it is banned in sport. Just imagine, right from the head to toe, you have the side effects of anabolic steroids. And this is one of the posters I had made in association with the World Anti-Doping Agency. You can download this poster, and absolutely like how destructive are these anabolic steroids. Right from head to toe, we have the destructive or the side effects which anabolic steroids cause. And see, in males, you have this breast development. We call it as a gynecomastia. If the males come out with breast, just imagine what would be his fate, you know. And of course, infertility because of low sperm production, male pattern baldness, liver and kidney cancers, high blood pressure leading to sudden cardiac death, paralysis, aggression, depression, suicidal tendencies. And what about in females? See, you know, there is a hair growth, They develop beard and mustache, of course, infertility in them, and fetal defects, menstrual disturbances, again, liver and kidney damage, cancers, high blood pressure leading to stroke, and irreversible change of the hoarseness of voice. Females will start developing a rough or a hoarse voice. So these are the ill effects in both males and females. And just look at this German shot put in coming to these 1960s and 70s, where East German athletes were given drugs, telling them that they were minerals and vitamins which would enhance performance, and they were natural supplements like proteins and all those things, nutritional supplements which were given to them. But over a period of time, German shot put champion had to undergo a sex change operation. Okay, so this is the thing which happened. So now coming to the prohibited methods, where we have this enhancement of oxygen transfer, chemical and physical manipulation, and of course the latest gene doping. So here we have this oxygen transport, where we have these procedures like blood doping or artificial oxygen transporters or liberators. Here in blood doping, what the athletes do is about 2 or 3 months just before their major international competition, they draw out their own blood, and this blood is centrifuged, and the packed cells, these packed cells are freezed at minus 30 degrees. And after the freezing of this, the athlete, they start training with good diet and nutrition, and just about 5 to 7 days just before the competition, what these athletes do is they take this packed cells, they mix it with normal saline, and again they reintroduce it into their own body by blood transfusion. So what happens now is there is an increase in red blood concentration, which in turn increases oxygen uptake. So the red blood cells carry oxygen, so there is increase in VO2 max. So it improves performance in endurance sports, and research has shown that about 7 to 12% of performance enhancement is there. So that is the reason, because of this performance enhancement, and of course more of the side effects like risks in blood transfusion itself, like allergic reactions, coagulation disorders, sudden deaths, and of course the risk in use of blood preparation if it is taken from others like HIV, hepatitis, malaria, sexually transmitted disease, and now COVID-19 also. And what about this chemical and physical manipulation? Now addition of chemical substance to the urine samples like probin acid, proteases, etc., and they are called as masking agents. And recently, about 2 or 3 months back, we had this young rowers in Hyderabad, where around 22 of them were found to have abused this probin acid. They had this masking agent in their urine sample, but when there was interrogation, they came out and said that the nutritional supplements they were taking, they had all taken the same nutritional supplement, protein rather, which contained, this protein nutritional supplement was laced with probin acid. Okay, so they also replace urine samples, catheterization, use of condoms, and these are physical manipulations which, if athlete is caught, will be directly under suspension, and a minimum of about 4 years of suspension will be handed over to them with a hefty fine. And now coming to the latest gene doping. Gene doping is an outgrowth of gene therapy. So gene doping involves insertion of DNA for the purpose of enhancing athletic performance. So World Anti-Doping Agency defines gene therapy as an experimental technique for treating diseases by altering the patient's genetic material. Most often, gene therapy works by introducing a healthy copy of a defective gene into the patient's cells. So this might be, what you would see like, bull which is been gene doped. See the size of the bull and see, like if you stand at least, it is at least 5 times the size of a normal human being. And see the effects of gene doping. See the first person, see the second one, and probably the third bodybuilder. Probably we may see such huge muscle mass in this near future, or gene therapy where it is used legally for medical purposes for treating diseases, as I already told you. Illegally for performance enhancement, what we call it as a gene doping, and of course, gene enhancement or destruction, what we call it as, you might have seen the movie Hulk, okay? So this might be the furtherance, and this will definitely erase the human race itself if we go into this. So now coming to the prohibited substances groups in certain sports like alcohol and blood pressure medicines, they are prohibited in competition in various sports, and have this violation threshold, okay? And again, these beta blockers, which are usually taken in shooting, archery, billiards, golf, skiing. So these are, like restricted in certain sports. Now coming to the nutrition supplements, which is your domain, where we have all these diet and nutrition specialists come into the fore, because we definitely have a lot of problems like insufficient product label, impurities which are laced with these substances. What about the control process of this preparation? And whether a written certificate from the producer, importer or retailer on the prescription or the preparation does not contain prohibited substance. But it is very difficult for these producers to give. But here in India, we have this Pune based company which claim to be drug free, and more than anything else, that is the reason why we should always promote good diet and nutrition backup for these athletes, where the sports nutrition and the qualified sports nutrition people and specialists come into this domain. As I had already told you in the initial, as one of the main arm of sports medicine, and sports nutrition is one of a very solid branch of sports medicine. Again, we have this Ayurveda, homeopathy, Unani, which has a strong foothold in our country, at least in India, where Ayurveda and homeopathy have stood the test of time. People's perception is that they are effective and safe, but the fact is that the ingredients are unknown, no effective product labeling, and always remember, these are not recognized by World Anti-Doping Agency. When the athlete goes to the doctor, okay, we should remember to ask your athlete about his sport and his level of competition. Over-the-counter medications, like any of us, if we go to any of the medical shops, definitely you will get the medicines. Overnight, you can get any of these medicines. So the government should come forward to regulate these medical shops, and to inform them, or to make a strict law that they should not dispense or give any medicines without a proper prescription by the qualified doctor. And again, the doctor himself must or herself confirm on the WADA website that the medicine prescribed by him is not on the list of prohibited substances, because so many times the doctor himself has prescribed banned substance to these athletes. Okay, and the athlete has the final responsibility. I take the case of Aparna Popat here, because just before the 2000 Sydney Olympics, because she had a cold, she went to the medical shop and she took this D-cold tablet which contained a banned substance, and immediately her sample was taken next day, and she came out with this banned substance in her urine, and that's why she could not catch the bus to Sydney Olympics. See what a great loss to our shuttle badminton player. So now, prohibited substance and methods. These lists are based, it is not my list or anybody's list. It is on the list of International Olympic Committee and World Anti-Doping Agency. As I already told, annually updated on 1st January. and this can be found. Just note down this website, okay, wada-ama.org. Okay, so in this website you will get each and everything related to anti-doping, and all must be aware of the binding rules of sports association, because every sports association, international federation have that their own rules and regulation in coordination with IOC and World Anti-Doping Agency. So doping control is targeted to all athletes who participate in organized sports. Test activities are concentrated on top athletes in different sports and now on anybody. So National Anti-Doping Agency's eyes are on everybody. So we all need to be careful. And we need to know about what is this therapeutic use exemption. We also call it as the TUE. TUE is, like when a player during his just prior to his competition, if he falls ill or if he is not well, and if he has to be given a medicine which is under the banned substance list of banned list in the banned list, if that medicine, then the athlete through his doctor, through his association, has to submit a therapeutic use exemption form, so that if he submits this application when necessary, and exempt will be granted if sanctioned in accordance with strict criteria by the World Anti-Doping Agency. Okay, this application will be scrutinized by the TUE committee, and if it needs to be given to him, the committee will approve, so that the athlete can take this medicine only during this period of time. So in a medical emergency, like during the competition itself, where the treatment is a priority, the player doctor should apply for a retroactive TUE, that is we call RTUE. Okay, even he can apply this and it can be approved if deemed to be correct. So now coming to the doping control, and which has always been a cat and mouse race for the athletes and the doping control officers and the World Anti-Doping Agency. Always like we have the rats always running ahead of the cats, but these athletes are coming out with various new procedures, various new drugs, but we as researchers are never behind. We are always behind them. So doping tests are again conducted by World Anti-Doping Agency, International Sports Federation, expert groups like IDTM and SNDT from Australia. IDTM is from Sweden. And of course, in India, we have this National Anti-Doping Agency, which the headquarters is in New Delhi. And this was my sporting activity where I represented Mysore University. If you can identify, way back in 1993, almost some 30 years back photograph. So what is the purpose of doping control? It is to prevent the use of substances and methods which are dangerous to health, and also they also increase performance, secure the athletes the right to be honest, and of course play fair play, respect the ethics in sports and the ethics of medicine, because health is our main priority. And doping tests, we have these 3 types of tests, where we have this in competition test, out of competition, and target testing. So in testing is done about 24 hours prior to the athlete when he comes to the venue of the competition. Okay, the city of the competition, it starts 24 hours as soon as he lands there until he leaves the venue. So this is in competition testing. Out of competition testing is at a training place or home or place of stay. This can be done round the year 365 days. Here the athlete has to inform, we call it as a whereabouts clause, where the athlete has to inform the National Anti-Doping Agency about the further 3 months. Like if this is September 29th, from September 29th, September to October, no, till December 29th, end of this year, he has to give his 3 months of where he's training, where he's going for competition, whether he's going home. This is about the whereabouts clause. And the third one is the target testing. In this target testing, we see athletes and their performance which increase overnight. Okay, and again, there might be complaints on that athlete with evidence and what we call it as a whistleblower. So now, so only then with sufficient evidence, these athletes will be target tested. Now again, this whereabouts information which I already told them, they have to provide the whereabouts information and must be provided in written form to the NADA for a period of 3 months. Failure to provide whereabout information is considered to be an anti-doping rule violation. And recently, you know, like 3-4 months back, you had these cricketers, they were let off because there was some problem and they could not inform National Anti-Doping Agency. These athletes escaped without any sanctions, you know. So now coming to the dope sample collection procedure, it contains 5 phases where we have the player selection, player notification. This is basically I am talking about the in competition dope control procedure, which is a very practical aspect. We have this player selection initially, then once we select the player, we notify him that he is selected for the dope control procedure. And once he is notified, we get him to the doping control station where his sample collection takes place. Then once the sample collection takes place, this sample is sent for analysis. And once these samples are analyzed, then we go for this result management where we inform the federation and of course to the athlete. So let us go into a tour of how this dope control process takes place into these 5 phases. Like initially, when the athlete is selected, he has to be informed through the doping control officer who are authorized. And here it is a football match where the athletes, international athletes, and were notified for dope check. This was at the World Military Games. And here the athletes, gold winning team, where 2 athletes from each side are selected and they are notified and they are escorted to the doping control station. So here we have these international DCOs during these Commonwealth Games. And again, this BCCI anti-doping team where we have a representative and observer from the BCCI, we have the DCO and the marshals or the chevron. And that is the team. So this is the team. And here we have this, we notify the athlete. These photos were clicked with consent of the athlete as well as the National Anti-Doping Agency and the Commission for educational purpose. So this was at the National Games in Guwahati. Here the athlete has won a gold medal, a female athlete, and she is being notified by a female marshal that she is selected for the dope control procedure. So again here, 2 of our team members are being escorted to the doping control station. Again, another high profile athlete is being summoned at the doping control station by the chevrons. And once here to the doping, the athlete has his own rights, you know, he will be asked to show his identity card for confirmation. Then he is entitled to have a representative present at the doping control station, as he is also entitled to leave the doping control station only with the agreement of the doping control officer in charge under proper observation. So the rights of a player, okay, he can attend to a press conference, he can attend, the player can attend a victory ceremony, he can go for a medical treatment if required, he can go for a cool down or a warm down. He should be accompanied with a representative to the doping control station, can have a representative, or in various international competitive, we have these representatives whom we call it as an interpreter or a translator if required. And he can also be accompanied by a doctor, a physio, teammate, etc. So these are the rights of the athlete. So here selection of the sample. So when the athlete is ready to provide his urine sample, here we are talking about the urine sample collection. So ready to provide a urine sample, and he may be asked to collect these urine sample containers, and he has to make sure that the sample containers, urine collection containers are unbroken and clean. So here, once the athlete who is ready to provide the urine sample in the doping control station, he will check the urine sample kit. Okay. So here you can see the slide that the athlete is collecting the urine sample kit. So once the athlete is ready to provide a urine sample, he will be supervised by the doping control officer or a doping control marshal. So the provision will be carried out in the dope control station itself, where a female athlete will be escorted with a female dope control officer, and a male will be escorted with a male DCO, and they will be asked to provide a minimum of 90 ml. So I always ask them to provide about 100 ml, which is a much safer quantity and volume. So once the athlete is ready, he goes in, he checks the kit, and he proceeds to the toilet where he will provide the sample. Here in the toilet, he has to open up his t-shirt or a tracksuit upper up till his chest level, and his track pant or shorts up to his knee level. Now the external genitalia of the male or female has to be in direct vision of the doping control officer, and the athlete has to provide urine in front of the very eyes of the doping control officer. Okay. So only the athlete is allowed to handle the sample, and nobody else will handle this, because there may be chance of the contamination or tampering of this urine sample. If the urine sample is sufficient, more than 90 ml, then it is a good sample. And if at all, if the athlete cannot provide about 90 ml, if he has provided about 30, 40, 50 ml, then it is incomplete sample, and we call it as a partial sample. And again, this is sealed, and athlete will ask again to provide a full remaining sample, which becomes about 90 ml plus. So why this is important, that the external genitalia of the athlete is to be provided, I mean, like to the visible eyes of the DCO, because at times we have some athletes, you know, who are transgenders, or females participate. I mean, male athletes may participate in female athletes. So just to avoid this, so the external genitalia should be visible for this doping control office. So World Anti-Doping Agency, like this FIFA and International Cricket ICC or our BCCI, these two organizations always want their DCOs to be medical doctors. But other organizations, they do not need their DCOs to be doctors. Here again, you know, like to recognize whether the athlete is proper, like whether he belongs, either he is a male or he is a female. Actually, you need to have the doctors here, and the World Anti-Doping Agency, International Olympic Committee needs to reconsider that all DCOs should be doctors. So now, once the athlete has provided about 90 ml plus urine, he will come to the doping control officer, to the table where the urine sampling process is done. So you can see the urine in the urine collecting vessel. Here the athlete is there. Here you can see again about 100 plus urine sample. So these are what we call it as a Berliner dope kits. Okay, these are imported from Belgium, and each of these kits will cost about 5,000 to 6,000 rupees. Okay, so these Berliner kits are removed, and here you can see a red or orange colored strip showing A, test A, and the blue one showing test B. These are two kits, sample A and sample B. Now the athlete is there on the table, and you can see the DCO, and you can also see a female chaperone or assistant doping control officer along with a female athlete. So here now this athlete will divide the sample in A and B bottles. Okay. In B sample, in the blue color, the athlete will pour about 30 ml of urine, a minimum of 30 ml. And in B bottle, there's the orange one. She pours the remaining urine which is present. So here dividing in between A and B, that is about a minimum of 30 ml in B bottle, that is blue color, and the remaining into A bottle. Okay, you should leave a few drops in the collecting vessel to check if the sample is suitable for analysis, where the athlete, after sampling this or putting the urine in the A and B bottle, the athlete will tighten up these bottles. Okay, you can see they are being screwed, and he also makes sure that the bottle do not leak and they also cannot be opened. So the few drops which has been left over, the specific gravity of the sample will be checked, and if the specific gravity is not up to the mark, then the athlete will be asked to provide another sample. So the DCO will measure the specific gravity with a refractometer or a lab stick. Okay. In case the sample do not meet the requirements, like 1.005 with a refractometer and 1.010 with a lab stick, the player will be asked to provide additional sample. Here the DCO is checking the specific gravity through the refractometer. So now once the whole procedure of sampling is done, then we need to do some paperwork. A doping control form is being filled up, and the athlete will be asked to inform whether he has taken any medications in the last 7 days, and he will record any vitamins, food supplements or herbal products that athlete has taken, and it will all be noted on the doping control form. So the athlete will be asked to check the number on the A and B samples, and of course also on the bottle, and he will asked to be, he will have to sign the form, and he will also receive a carbon copy of the form. So the athlete will seal the samples in the kit, and he's sealing it completely, and the doping control form. These are the forms, and the right side one will go to the laboratory. So when the sample goes to the laboratory, it goes in a sealed box. Okay, you can see this sealed, like transportation bag. After the control, the sealed sample and the laboratory copies of the documents are sealed to a transportation bag. The laboratory copies do not contain any information about the athlete's identity. The samples are delivered to the laboratory approved by the International Olympic Committee and World Anti-Doping Agency. Of course, our National Dope Testing Laboratory in New Delhi. At present, this is under suspension. Now we are all sending our samples to the Qatar Doha laboratory. So once these samples reach the laboratory, here sample A is analyzed with this special bottle opening equipment. Actually, you cannot open this bottle because it is a 10 mm thick glass vessel, which you cannot break it. It's very difficult to break. So here we use this specialized equipment to open up the bottles. Okay. So once the A sample has been tested, over 300 to 400 of these banned substances are checked in the laboratory, and it takes about 5 to 7 days to check all these banned substances in the urine sample. Okay, if the A sample does not come out, and if you say if the sample is negative, then we do not inform the sports federation or the athlete, and this athlete is deemed to be negative and he is clean or clear and has not taken any banned substance. Now, if this A sample contains or being found to be positive, then sample B, which was a blue colored bottle, will be analyzed after a request of the athlete and on the expense of the athlete or the sports federation. The athlete or his representative has the right to be present with the sample B and is analyzed in the different laboratory. Okay, in case the test results of sample A do not, sample B does not confirm the positive test result of the sample A, the temporary suspension will immediately expire. So finally, we always talk about this clean sport. Okay, if we see these two high-profile athletes of yesteryears, definitely we'll come to know who is clean and who is unclean. Okay, so clean sport versus unclean sport. So clean sport is most of our athletes are clean. That is the reason why we always conduct these dope checks to prove that all our athletes are clean. Most athletes are clean, as only 1% of the controlled athletes have used prohibited substance, and therefore 99% of all our controlled athletes are clean. And an athlete is clean until proven otherwise. So the final say or the take home message is a clean sport is what we all stand for. And we always have to say no for doping. And definitely you as our sports nutritionist and the nutrition department always come in hand in advising our athletes what to consume and what not to consume. And it has always been a demand as we as sports medicine doctors who always accompany the sports team, we have always put forth our requirement to have a sports nutritionist along with our sports medicine team, where we have this in the sports medicine team, we have this sports medicine doctors, we have this sports physiotherapists, we have this exercise physiologists, we have this sports massage therapists, we have these sports psychologists, and along with that, we want you as a sports nutritionist to also accompany the sports medicine team so that all our athletes are really given a good prescription, or what again I call it as, let's all work together so that, we have this the best of the performance which comes out from the athlete, because there is a saying that an athlete is known by what he eats. So what he eats means we need to provide him a proper diet and nutrition, proper hydration facilities, what he needs to drink and what he shouldn't, and how much he has to drink, and all these things come under your esteemed department of nutrition and diet and the sports nutrition department itself. Okay, so thank you very much, and I have my phone number here, and anytime you need anything from my side, always you can contact me. You can always contact this Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine, where we have this Medical Council of India approved sports medicine doctors who have done their MDs and diplomas in sports medicine, and they are always on the forefront to help you people so that we can always interact and work together. Thank you very much for giving me this slot to talk. Thank you one and all, and hope to have a good interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran sir, for the in-depth and the detailed explanation of the topic, especially giving us practical inputs, highlighting with a few examples. I'm sure our participants would have well learned the information, especially the procedures for dope testing you explained in detail. Sir, I personally like the quote, "Nope to dope." Sir, can we take a few questions from our participants?
Sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
Yeah. We have one participant who wanted to know, what, in your opinion, is the toughest challenge faced by the NADA or other agencies in India today? How can it be overcome?
So a very apt question, and here always, let's work together. This is what I gave you a message, let's work together. Here, the toughest challenge being from the grassroots level. So here what happens is, right from the beginning, like I also showed one of the slides that a few of our athletes like were caught for high school athletes were caught for this doping. You know, as soon as their names were announced, these athletes never came to the podium to receive their gold, silver, and bronze medals. They just ran away from the stadiums, and we never could find them. But of course, we could locate them, but they never came because it was quite evident in these young high school athletes also that they were into some sort of a banned substance. This is because in today's world of sports, you have this what we call it as the name, fame, and a lot of money and awards is coming in. And if these athletes, like, you know, their life is done. So this is the reason where athletes seek for a shortcut to success. So here we have all our, right from the parents to the coaches to the friends, we all need to, and of course the doctors, we all need to come and join hands to impart this, what we call it as education, what we are already doing it. Okay. So once this education starts, we need to tell these young hearts that the side effects of or the very harmful effects of this doping and drugs. Once the athletes understand that a lot of harmful effects happen or come into fore, and of course more than that, we have to put the idea of the patriotism, the nationalism in them, that it is not about only themselves, it is also about their family, the district, the state, the country, and their sporting organization or the federation will all go into the blacklist of doping offenders. So this nationalism has to be brought into those athletes so that they themselves stay away from drugs. So that is the reason always I tell the first instance itself, they have to get away. So this is the basic challenge. It is not always about the treatment aspect. It is always about the preventive aspect, always about the wellness aspect. Okay. So this has to be the forefront of our into our consideration, rather than you know, like treating these athletes or treating a disease. We should always, you know, like going into the preventive aspect or the educational aspect. So this has been the greatest challenge for NADA. So I hope this explanation suffices the person who has asked this question.
Yes, sir. Sir, in continuation with that, you had told that it is a teamwork which should be involved. So how, as a nutritionist, we can help avoid the intentional consumption of banned substances?
Definitely, ma'am. As soon as you open up any of these Google websites or any of these, you have 101 nutritional supplements which pop up. Okay, this is one. And second thing is, any of these athletes directly go into any of the gyms. Most of these gyms, they sport these nutritional supplements, saying that these are proteins, these are weight reduction supplements. And if you take these weight reduction supplements, as soon as you open up news or a TV channel, you have this lot of this channel coming up and promoting their drugs, saying that if you consume these medicines, there is weight reduction. And definitely these are all the, I mean, like, I do not want to name or brand any of these, but we all know, as a nutritionist, as a sports nutritionist, as a department of nutrition and dietetics, here we need to come and talk to these high school boys, give them a lot of talks, go to every school, go to the college, give talks to them about the diet and nutrition. And we need to inform them about these banned substances or these nutritional supplements which are laced, which may be laced with these banned substances. Okay, this is how you can always we can always work together, and the sports nutrition department or your national association should come and work with the national sports association, starting from the district association. Do join hands with these Sports Authority of India, or we our own national our Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine. Join hands with them. We have this Indian Society of Sports and Exercise Medicine, Indian Association of Sports Medicine, Indian Federation of Sports Medicine. We have these national state associations, national sports association. Join hands with them so that you come forward and you can always prescribe them what is the good diet, what is diet and nutrition, what is a sports nutrition, so that slowly over a period of time, everybody needs to get to know, and they should always come and ask you first, like what they have to eat and what they have they should not eat. This is how we can conglomerate and complement each other.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we were talking about good diet. Is there any specific diet to be followed when the player has taken some drugs which is banned? Is there any specific nutritional tips you would like to?
Actually, when the player is on dope or when he is, there's nothing like he should not dope. First, this is the thing. Okay, and there is nothing like a good diet or something like that. That diet, like which you people prescribe, or which I always say that the perfect diet is one which comes from the mother's kitchen, you know, that is supposed to be one of the best. And I always say that planned or the best diet in the whole world is our Indian thali, you know. So that thali which provides optimal amounts of carbohydrates, fats, proteins, minerals, vitamins, sufficient fiber, sufficient hydration, or a liquid diet, you know, this is the best. And there is nothing like, you know, like when an athlete is doped or is on drugs, there is nothing like, you know, a perfect diet. You know, if he is on drugs, means he is going to the dustbin. That's it.
We agree with your opinion as well, sir. As sports nutritionists, we also believe in balanced diet to be given for any human individual, and especially for athletes as well. Sir, if you have time, can we take one more question?
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. Definitely, I have lots of time.
Yeah, sir. This is regarding female athletes who become pregnant and abort the fetus just 3 months ahead of the event for better performance. Is it true? If yes, how does it affect?
Sure, ma'am. You are giving like a case scenario where athlete is 3 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Okay. So
because we have heard cases like this, so we thought we'll just clarify it from your side.
Definitely, ma'am. Definitely. This is a very important question because the female athlete itself is a big topic in the Department of Sports Medicine. The case scenario, as you put forth, is a 3 months high-profile athlete who is pregnant and who wants to continue with training activity. Yes. Actually, per se, this athlete who is pregnant with all the normal conditions, with a normal obstetric what we call it as the vitals, or her medical profile, if considering her to be a normal pregnant athlete, okay, then about 400 to 600 calories of food has to be increased in her day-to-day regular diet plan, along with proper iron, calcium, and folic acid supplement. Okay, this is standard.
Okay.
Okay. Then second aspect is, if she is training, then again you need to add on another 600 to 800 calories, at a total of about 1200 to 1500 calories for her day-to-day diet. Okay, this is one aspect. So second aspect is, many of them think that if once you get pregnant, you should stop exercising. No, even athletes, we have certain training protocols in the first trimester, second trimester, and the third trimester of pregnancy, where the athlete follows certain training protocols. Even just prior to 1 week or 2 weeks, even then also she can perform exercise, but not of that high intensity activity, but definitely of a lower intensity activity, because we have seen international athletes. You must have heard of Zola Butt. She's a British marathoner. Exactly after 2 weeks of her pregnancy, after delivery, in her 3rd or 4th week of her post pregnancy, she was again running 10 kilometers and half marathon. Can you believe this? Unbelievable event, at least in our Indian scenario, where post pregnancy we go, we have that full scenario of about 5 to 6 months of that post pregnancy rituals, where we treat, like definitely each one of us know that 5 to 6 months of post pregnancy rituals which go on in our houses. Okay, this is one aspect. And the second aspect is, these athletes need not come out up till 5 to 6 months. They train, they can definitely go into mild to moderate intensity activities. Okay, so that is where you as a sports nutritionist come into the play, along with a sports medicine doctor and with your gynecologist, sports gynecologist. You 3 of you can form a team and come out with a proper diet and along with a trainer. You can all sit together along with a sports physiotherapist. You 5 of us make a team, and you make out what training has to be done, what is the medical backup from the gynecologist, what is the training protocol, and everything will be planned by your sports medicine doctor, the head of the team. And this is how, along with the sports nutritional backup, you can prescribe a good prescription. So rolling back to 60s and 70s and 80s, where again in the East German here, the German rule, where these athletes were actually made pregnant. Okay, athletes were made pregnant up till their 5th month. These athletes were given high intensity training protocols. They were given good diet and nutrition. Along with that, they were given good nutritional nutrition supplements backup. And they were trained. Just about 2 to 3 weeks, just prior to their competition, these female athletes who were pregnant were aborted. Okay, see, this was a cruel thing which was going on in 60s and 70s in Europe. Because of this high increase in the hormonal profile when a female athlete gets pregnant, so all parameters in the body, the hormonal parameters will be increased. So this is how the performance enhancement used to take place in these female athletes. So once they aborted, they again went back to the high intensity training and they rolled into the competition. This was one way or one method where the females were they were induced pregnancy and aborted just a few weeks before the competition. This was again, this again came into the ambit of the World Anti-Doping Agency, and this was a cruel thing. And all of these female athletes who underwent this type of procedure came and they have all filed cases in the court of law. So this is how the things are. So I think my question has been answered.
Yes, sir. You have answered our question. Sir, with the interest of time, we will just take one last question from one of our participants.
Okay.
You were talking about TUE. Is this TUE applicable for athletes with known health condition? Example, hypertension, for which the athlete may take a beta blocker or any other medications. How is it considered?
Yeah, like a therapeutic use exemption. Okay. So actually,
yes, sir.
International Olympic Committee, Medical Committee conducted a survey on all the Olympic athletes. Like we have about 10,000 Olympic athletes, and out of them, 1% of all Olympic athletes were found to be asthmatics. Okay, 1% of all Olympic athletes were found to be asthmatics, and if they have asthma, they need to take a banned substance like like a beta-2 agonists, which are banned in sports. So they all apply for a therapeutic use exemption. Likewise, even for beta-2 antagonists, where we use it for hypertension. okay, as BP medicines. These athletes have to meet their doctor, and they have to, in 3 weeks, because he already knows his health condition, he has to talk to his doctor, and he has to apply what medicine he is taking, what health condition he has, and why he is being given this medication. Okay, with all these details, he has to give it to the National Federation and to the National Doping Control Agency, and this National Anti-Doping Agency has a TUE committee. So this TUE committee will go through the application, and if it is deemed to be fit, then they will approve this therapeutic use exemption form to the athlete to be used during the competition. So once this therapeutic use exemption permission has been given to the athlete, it is only for that particular competition. So as soon as the competition is over, this application is not valid. And if at all this athlete is called for a doping control procedure, then this athlete will give this permission or hand it over this application which has been granted to the doping control officer. This application will be attached with the doping control form and sent to the doping control laboratory, and this will also be informed to the headquarter of the dope control laboratory. Okay, so this is how the doping or TUE is followed. And if at all the TUE is rejected, then the athlete will not be able to take that. Okay, he will not consume that. He has to leave this medicine, or once he comes to the doping control laboratory, if he is found, or during the procedure, if he is taking, he has to inform it to the doping control officer that he is consuming, like in last 1 week, he was consuming this antihypertensive, and he has also applied for this thing, but it has been rejected. But still, if he is continuing to take it, he has to inform it.
Okay. Okay, sir. That clarifies the doubt, I believe. Thank you, sir, for taking all our questions and answering very patiently. Doping is a very sensitive issue, and your talk provided us with a better understanding of the topic and the need to educate people involved in sports about its consequences. Thank you, sir, once again for your enriching talk.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you once again. Jai Hind.
Dear delegates, we are happy to share with you all that we have totally 1013 registrations for this national level e-workshop on dynamic facets of sports nutrition, meeting the new challenges. With this, we come to the end of the morning session of the workshop. We take a break now and will connect with you all with another 2 interesting speakers with 2 interesting topics. Join us at 2 o'clock for the post-lunch sessions. We would like to keep you all informed that the feedback form for day 1 would be shared at the end of today's workshop after the post-lunch sessions. Looking active participation in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.